violence against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes, and this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world, and then shall the end come.
Tell us, when will these things be? And what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age?
Here's today's prophecy update. Have you heard of the new urban agenda? You haven't? Well, don't worry about it then. After all, what you don't know can't hurt you, right? Wrong. The United Nations has a plan for global governance. If you don't know what global governance means, let's just call it what it is: world government. The overall plan is called Sustainable Development. Sustainable development defines the goals that all nations should attain by 2030. The plan focuses largely on cities, since a large percentage of the world's population now lives in cities. Thus, the new urban agenda. The UN has a completely developed plan for world government and intends for every Earth to be under its control. Will the United States become a part of the coming one world government? That may depend on how we vote on November 8th. We'll explain further on today's edition of End of the Age. Well, ladies and gentlemen, there is so much at stake in the world. There has been a plan to create a one world government for a long time. The plan has been pursued in earnest in the United States of America, step by step, over the last 100 years. Since the fall of the tearing down of the Iron Curtain, everything has accelerated dramatically. Until now then, the U.S. is cooperating with the United Nations to implement its global plan for one world government. I came across an article entitled "UN Goes All In for Unlimited Migration." It caught my attention, and then when I read the article, I was alarmed, to say the least. This article comes from WND, October the 21st of 2016. I want to share some of it with you because, ladies and gentlemen, we are in the middle right now of a crisis. Some of the political forces in the United States are pushing us toward this one world government agenda. There are other political forces pushing back, saying we must not go into globalism. We must retain our national sovereignty. Now that battle is raging. Whether they're openly using those words or not, but it is raging right now. That's the reason we need to understand it. You know, it's possible to be involved in an election like America's involved in right now. That is the 800-pound gorilla in the living room, and that is globalism. Are we going to move toward a one-world government where borders are dissolved and people come in at will, and there's nothing we can do about it? Or are we going to return to national sovereignty? Are we going to re-embrace our Declaration of Independence? And are we going to once again control who comes here and make sure that they ascribe to the Judeo-Christian value system that made America the great nation that she has become? That's what we're dealing with here. So let's get back to this article. UN goes all in for unlimited migration. Borders and border security are not popular concepts at the United Nations. The United Nations has cooked up a new urban agenda. That's the name of it. coming soon to a city near you. It was unveiled this last week at Quito, Ecuador, at the so-called Habitat 3 conference. I wonder why we haven't heard about all this. This was my first exposure, and I follow the news avidly every single day. The article goes on to say, and part of the plan enthusiastically embraced by unlimited migration across open borders. Migrants displaced by war, failing economies, or other hardships will be seen as having rights in nations and their own. Now wait, what did we just read? Are you serious? Let's read it one more time. Migrants displaced by war, failing economies, or other hardships will be seen as having rights in nations other than their own. Now, let's ask this question because we need to. If you're a Christian, you believe in being good to your fellow man. However, this particular statement states that migrants displaced by war, failing economies, or other hardships will be seen as having rights in nations other than their own. Do people from other nations have rights in the United States of America? Do they have a right to even cross our borders? Do we have any obligation to admit them into the United States of America and to grant to them citizenship? Well, the truth of the matter is, we have no responsibility at all, because our Constitution provides for the rights of American citizens. Now, if through our immigration policies we decide to bring people into our nation and then they start through the process, either citizen some other status inside the United States of America, then that's the way it will go. However, to say that migrants, just because
Okay, looks like we're having a little bit of problem with Irvin's connection today. You're listening to End of the Age. Irvin is live from Jerusalem, or he was live from Jerusalem. And while I see if we can get a little better connection there, I do have a clip here that we can play from Irvin that is from a DVD that he shot a couple of years ago called The Seeds of Armageddon. Let's go there now.
Of Armageddon. All of you know that the Battle of Armageddon is that final battle where Almighty God will come down and save the nation of Israel from the invading armies of the world governmental system. Now, the seeds of Armageddon were sown on November the 29th of 2012. In this lesson today, we're going to understand what really happened on November the 29th, 2012, and why it's so absolutely important. Okay, so then what did happen on November the 29th of 2012? Mahmoud Abbas, the president of the Palestinians, went before the United Nations in 2011. He applied for UN membership for the Palestinians. However, his efforts were blocked by the United States and other powers. Consequently, he decided to go back to the United Nations in 2012, and there he could apply for non-member statehood. Now, the UN General Assembly, where the U.S. had no veto power, had the power to grant Palestinian recognition as a state, even though the UN General Assembly does not have the power to admit them to the United Nations. That happened on November the 29th, 2012. The resolution was presented by Mr. Mahmoud Abbas, and the UN General Assembly voted. The vote was 138-9. It was absolutely overwhelming. Now, the resolution stated that the Palestinians should be given statehood recognition within 1967 borders. This means that the area called the West Bank, or Biblical Judea-Samaria, would be under Palestinian control. The resolution also recognized East Jerusalem as the Palestinian capital. Okay, now, What does UN recognition change then? The vote was so overwhelming, 138-9 with 41 abstentions. And this meant that the whole world basically believes that the area called Judea, Samaria, or the West Bank, the occupied territories, should be placed under Palestinian control as a Palestinian state. But Israel controls this area right now and has since the 6 Days War in 1967. So this declares Israel to be an occupied...
Okay, we have Irvin back. Let's see if this connection's any better. Are you there, Irvin?
Okay, Jim. Well, just to remind everyone, I am in Jerusalem, and by the marvels of technology, we're able to broadcast to you live from Jerusalem. In Jerusalem in the morning, headed for Tiberias. We've had an absolutely marvelous tour. A group of people, a total of 83 of us on this tour. Everything's fine, no injuries. Just tremendous touring, and the people have been so nice on our tour. We sure appreciate that. Okay, well, Jim, I think we're ready to plunge back in. We're talking today about the United Nations and its migration policy. We're talking in particular about the new urban agenda. It's the United Nations agenda for cities around the world. They fully intend to control every city, every town, every hamlet in the world, and they have a plan for it. Okay, now let's get back into the article today. By now, most Americans who follow world events are familiar with the UN's plan for global governance as envisioned by its 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, approved by some Francis in September of 2015. Now, this agenda includes 17 goals aimed at ending hunger, wiping out poverty, and stamping out global income inequality by transforming our world through swift changes ostensibly aimed at freeing cross-border labor mobility, among other things. Now, let's pause here just a moment and take a look at this. We're talking here about an agenda. Now, think about this. Jim, are you still with me there?
Yes, I am.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure because I heard you speaking in the background and I was getting a little bit confused here. Let me go one more time. And the agenda for sustainable development, it includes ending hunger, wiping out poverty, and stamping out global income inequality. Now, how do you stamp out global income inequality? You know what that is? If you don't have global income inequality, you have worldwide socialism. I mean, that's the plan for worldwide socialism, that all of us would make the same. So what they're really promoting at the United Nations is worldwide socialism, and here the United States of America is buying into it, which means a total end of freedom. Socialism is the control of the means production by the government, and then everybody shares equally in the result, whether they work or whether they don't work. Now, socialism has been proved to fail over and over and over again. Talk about China, talk about the ex-Soviet Union. No matter where you try socialism, it ends up biting the dust. Right now, Nicaragua is going through the horrible pains of attempting the socialist ideal, and yet if you're not familiar with these terms, they can go right over the top of your head. But let me read this one more time. This agenda, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, includes goals aimed at ending hunger, wiping out poverty. Now, we would all like those goals, of course. Stamping out global income inequality. You know, we're hearing that all the time, even in the United States of America. Income inequality. Ladies and gentlemen, you will never stamp out income inequality. Jesus Christ himself said, the poor you have with you always. And the only way to stamp out income inequality is to pass a law that everybody makes the same thing. And when you do, all the real movers and shakers are going to quit working hard. So why should they work if they can do nothing and still make as much as the guy that's next door? You destroy all incentives. It is anti-biblical. Now, I know people out there sometimes say, well, Jesus Christ was a socialist, but that is the furthest thing from the truth. Jesus talked about some people one time that were left with resources by their master. One was given 10 talents, 10 talents. One was given 5 talents. One was given 1 talent. And when the master came back, the one who was given 10 talents doubled his, and so now he had 20. Another one who was given 5 doubled his, and he had 10. And to both of them, he said, well done, thou good and faithful servant. But to the one who had 1 talent, he was afraid. He buried it in the backyard, and when the master came to receive what was his, he said, oh, I knew you were a hard person, and I was scared, so I buried it, and here it is. It's yours. And the man said, bind this wicked and slothful servant and cast him into outer darkness. You could at least put it in the bank, so it would have drawn interest. And then he said, take the 1 talent that he had and give to him that had the 10, because I know he'll do something with it. So Jesus was not a socialist. The Bible teaches if you don't work, you can't eat. Now, we're not talking about people that absolutely cannot work. Our hearts go out to all those people, and we have instincts to help them. All of us do, especially if you're a Christian. So consequently, we just have to make sure that we understand that what they're selling here is a one-world government, and that will be a socialistic government. Oh, by the way, that is specifically prophesied in your Bible. If you want to see the end-time one-world government that's prophesied there, go to Revelation chapter 17, and there you see a beast, and that beast is red. Red is the official color of socialism used to represent socialism in the Bible. The end-time one-world government of the Antichrist will be a socialist government, which is the very one-world government that they're planning right now that's being described in this article. Okay, so this agenda includes stamping out global income inequality by transforming our world through sweeping changes ostensibly aimed at freeing cross-border labor mobility, among other things. Hillary Clinton, anointed by Obama as his successor, said in a speech to Wall Street bankers she envisions the U.S. as part of a single hemispheric common market with free trade and open borders, according to one of the WikiLeaks data dumps, which has not been refuted. In another bombshell revealed by WikiLeaks, Mrs. Clinton told Goldman Sachs bankers that Americans who want to limit immigration are fundamentally un-American. Now, think about that. If you are not for absolutely unlimited immigration, then that means you're un-American. Of course, that's according to her opinion, her definition. It's certainly not according to our laws, because, if we obey our laws, then immigration is limited. We have laws that control immigration. They're being ignored right now. And not obeying those laws, President Obama is violating his oath of office. He vowed to faithfully execute the laws of the United States of America. Well, he's only executed the ones that he likes. He ignores the ones that he doesn't like, so consequently, he's exercising dictatorial powers right now. Well, the article goes on to say that Hillary Clinton has also called for a 550% increase in the resettlement of Syrian refugees in America. Now, that's 550% more than Obama's vastly increased level of more than 12,000 resettled in 1 year. Out of those 12,000, 99.9% of them are Muslims. And Muslims are trained in Sharia law. their loyalty, their highest loyalty, unless they're not a good Muslim, but their highest loyalty is to the Muslim religion, which calls for Sharia law. That means they are calling for the abolition of the Constitution of the United States of America. Now think about this. Why? Now let's really think, regardless of where your political loyalties lie. Let's think. Why would anyone bring in thousands of people who we know have a loyalty to a system of government other than the United States of America? If you are Muslim, if you believe in the Quran, you believe in Sharia law. And Sharia law is opposite and opposed to the Constitution of the United States of America. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I don't have an axe to grind here. I'm just saying we've got to face the truth. We're in a death struggle, a life and death struggle, with global socialism and with the plan of the United Nations for a one world government. Let me give you a little bit more of this information. In short, Hillary Clinton's agenda for cities sounds an awful lot like the UN's agenda for cities as laid out in the new Urban Agenda document approved this week by world leaders in Quito. She's totally in line with the UN agenda, on board with everything they do, says economist Patrick Wood, author of Technocracy Rising, the Trojan Horse of Global Transformation. Now let's talk about Habitat 3, which was the name of the conference. Habitat 3 was attended by a staggering 50,000 people. All these people traveled down to Ecuador to attend this conference. I'm sure all of them financed by their governments or by some kind of an organization or another. But it was attended by 50,000 people, including more than 200 mayors and another 140 city delegations. The sole purpose of this conference is to approve a 24-page document called the New Urban Agenda. Now think about this. I follow news all the time, and I'd never heard of the New Urban Agenda. And probably 99% of the people listening to me right now have never heard of the New Urban Agenda. But here our government is participating in this conference and is adopting this agenda, but the American people are woefully uninformed about it. And probably the government doesn't want us to be informed about it. And we know now that our news media is basically in cahoots with the government, and the things that they don't want us to know, they just don't publish. They just let it go underneath the radar. Well, in this document lies the globalist plans for cities, all cities, big, small, even tiny cities. Every American who lives in a city will at some point see the fruits of the plan the UN has in store for the world, says Wood, an expert on global governance and the technocracy movement. The Habitat Conference convenes only once every 20 years, but when it does, it leaves a trail of anti-capitalist, anti-liberty global standards in its wake, says Wood. These are the standards by which the UN wants each and every city in the world to be operated. They come packaged as non-binding, and Congress never approves them, yet somehow the global standards coming out of the major UN conferences always seem to filter down even the smallest American hamlet. How does this happen? Never approved by Congress, and yet at the same time, it seems like they always end up being implemented. How? Here's the way. Through federal grants. Any city that accepts federal grants will at some point be required to implement the practices that the UN has declared sustainable. Let me pause just a moment to encourage every person out there to hear one of our DVDs, World Government Forming Now. If you do not believe that we are far advanced into a world government, you need this DVD immediately. All you have to do to obtain your own copy is to pick up the phone and call us. The number to call is 1-800-END-TIME. That's 1-800-363-8463. World Government Forming Now. These things are moving very rapidly. If once we're in world government, we won't be able to get out. We are at the moment of decision, even right now. Are you for global governance? Are you for globalism? Or are you for defending America's borders, retaining our national sovereignty, and our Declaration of Independence? Now, the people for global governance, they want to trash our Declaration of Independence and instead adopt a Declaration of Interdependence, that we're all dependent on each other, that we're one global village. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's what we're facing right now. Now, what I'd like to do is take a moment to invite each of you to become a part of End Time Ministry, this world government, but it does not emphasize that America has to be involved. Some nations are going to be involved. Great Britain, gone. Russia, gone. Germany, gone. The European Union, gone. But America is not included in the prophecy, and consequently, we need to pull back, and it looks like we have a chance to do it right now in this election. I don't know whether we're going to do it in this election or not. I do believe we're going to do it because I believe the prophecies indicate that. So educate yourself. Get the DVD, World Government Forming Now. It's a single DVD, and you can get that by calling 1-800-END-TIME right now. In the meantime, educate yourself and then talk. We too long have remained silent because the liberals have intimidated people. They're afraid to take a stand. Don't be afraid. The reason we're afraid to take a stand is because we don't know what we're talking about. So get your own copy of World Government Forming Now. That way you'll know what you're talking about and become a partner with End Time Ministries. You can do that by calling 1-800-END-TIME. The number to call is 1-800-363-8463. So do two things. Get World Government Forming Now. Become a partner with End Time Ministries.
From here to Armageddon, a new exciting 8-lesson series to share with your friends and family. Order yours right away.
Answering many questions like how far are we from the Battle of Armageddon? What will happen between now and then? Where are we on the timeline? Your questions answered in this exciting 8-lesson series, From Here to Armageddon.
Go to endtime.com or call 1-800-END-TIME. That's 1-800-END-TIME, 1-800-363-8463. Order yours right away.
I know someone's praying for you can be cliche, and some might think that it's just a saying. But here at End Time Ministries, we actually are praying for you. Irvin and the End Time team begin each morning by taking your name directly to the Lord in prayer for our partners and requests submitted by each of you the previous day. The Bible tells us in Matthew 18, where 2 or 3 are gathered together in my name, there am I in the midst. We may not know each of you personally, but we feel like we are very much connected because you are one of the reasons that this ministry is able to spread our message throughout the entire world. We know this can be a very difficult time for everyone. That makes you partnering with us through prayer and your giving very special. Call 1-800-END-TIME or go to endtime.com and partner with End Time today. You can help make a world impact.
If your station only carries the first 30 minutes of End of the Age, go to endtime.com and click the watch button to continue today's broadcast. You can also finish up later by clicking the archives button.
Welcome back to End of the Age, and we're talking today about sustainable development, and we're talking about the plan for cities around the world. This particular plan became the subject of the Habitat 3 conference, and the document was called the New Urban Agenda. And we're going to be taking your calls in this segment of the program as soon as Jim Stickleman is able to reestablish our message and system. We've temporarily, Jim, gone offline there, so please help me out on your end if you can. In the meantime, I want to go on and give you some more information about this message. Now, watch this very carefully. The world is run by big data, and the world is to embrace instead of globalized one world standards for everything, whether it be common core education standards, globalized police standards that Attorney General Loretta Lynch announced at the UN last fall in the form of the Strong Cities Network, or global standards for health care by way of Obamacare. You name it, standardize it. Now, it's really interesting. The article goes has already said that anyone
All right, let's go back to Irvin here, if we can establish connections here in a minute. Right now, though, I want to read an article that I found that I thought was interesting. It's from the World Bank president. Globalization is not the root of all evil it's made out to be. Now, I saw this article a couple of weeks ago. World Bank President Jim Yong Kim told CNBC on Thursday that the biggest concern for the world economic engine is the level of uncertainty on everything from political outcomes to the impact of Brexit. The uncertainty for us is really an issue because it impacts directly on the economies of developing countries and almost always negatively, Kim said on Squawk on the Street from the sidelines of the World Bank meeting in Washington, D.C. Exemplified by Brexit and to some extent Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, the notion of the root of all evil is globalization is a fundamental misperception of how the world economy works, Kim said. He stressed the importance of trade. All the talk on every side about looking inward and not about embracing the rest of the world, but about bringing trade down. We're extremely worried because economic implications for everybody are very, very bad. On the matter of Britain's June vote to leave the European Union, Kim said the full impact of this decision has yet to be felt, despite the initial financial market swoon and recovery. So it seems like the World Bank president says that globalism isn't all that bad. And of course, if you line up his views with the prophecies of the Bible, we can tell and see that that could be further from the truth. And again, if you want to get into this deeper, you can get the DVD that Irvin ordered in the first half of the program called Will Government For Me Now? By calling us at 1-800-END-TIME. That's 1-800-363-8463. Or you can also get another DVD that deals with pretty much the same subject called The Master Plan of the Dragon. And it's a 3-lesson set there. And you can get that by calling us at 1-800-363-8463. Let's see if we have recovered Irvin. And Irvin, are you there? Hello, Irvin.
I am here, Jim.
Alrighty, you were cutting out a little bit, so
I hope you can hear me. Can you hear me?
We can hear you now, so let's go ahead and you can continue on, and we'll see if this connection holds up. If not, I'll just play something for the rest of the show. But go ahead and continue where you were.
Okay, that'll be fine. And
yeah.
Okay, we will do that, Jim, and we do apologize for the technical difficulties. Sometimes when you rely on these connections, they work fine, and other times they become glitchy. So thank you for your patience with us. Again, I'm coming from downtown Jerusalem. It's my last evening here. We'll be moving up to northern Israel early in the morning. Nevertheless, we're looking tonight at this new thing called the New Urban Agenda. And here's what the preamble to the New Urban Agenda says. It says, cities are the key to tackling global challenges. So these people are viewing cities as the key ingredient right now to implementing sustainable development. Now, the reason cities are the key is because everybody there works a job of some sort. They can be tracked, they can be controlled, and they know what everybody's doing. Consequently, that allows the United Nations to set goals for everybody to know how much money they're making, where they're living, what they're doing. It goes on to say, so these people are viewing cities as the key ingredient right now to implementing sustainable development. And they say this battle for sustainability will be won or lost in the cities. And the UN document goes on to state that this agenda is the first step for operationalizing sustainable development in an integrated and coordinated way by the global, national, subnational, and local levels. Look at that. We're not just talking about global or national. We're talking about local levels. The United Nations plans to plan every city on earth. The United Nations plans to micromanage the whole world. Every person will be in their database. It will be like Big Brother is really watching you. In essence, it's a roadmap to global governance where American cities will no longer get their direction from elected officials representing them on the city council or even the state legislature, but the United Nations itself will be making the rules. The local councils will likely not even know that the rules they are following in order to qualify for federal grants are tied to United Nations standards for sustainability. Now, I don't want to get so deep here that we lose all of you out there, but let me back up to show you how this all works, because I watched it happen to the educational system here in America. Never forget when Herbert Walker Bush was running for president, he promised to abolish the Federal Department of Education. It was something that was brand new. It was already sticking its nose in everybody's business up until about, the 1970s or 80s. There was no Department of Education on the federal level. All education was left at the state level. But there were people who felt like the federal government needed to tell the states what to teach and what kind of standards to meet. Now, once the federal education department took over, all of our SAT scores dropped. They began to pass down edicts from on high and to control what is being taught. Of course, now we see that they're mandating that you must control that same-sex marriage is an alternative lifestyle. You have to be told that a person can make up what sex they are, regardless of how they were born. They can choose. If they're a boy, they can choose to become a girl, or if they're a girl, they can choose to become a boy, or they can choose to be transgender. I mean, this is the crazy stuff that's been taught. But I remember when Herbert Walker Bush was running for office, he promised when he was elected to destroy the Department of Education. But you know what happens when these politicians get elected sometimes? All those promises seem to just disappear under the rug. And that's what happened to that promise. Now, his son, George W. Bush, promised that he would move the U.S. Embassy in Israel to Jerusalem the day of his inauguration. I mean, I was so hopeful. I voted for him, mainly because of that. And the day of his inauguration, nothing. The day after, nothing. The week after, nothing. The year after, nothing. He completed a full term. Then he runs again. Doesn't say a word about it this time. Gets elected. 8 years. The embassy doesn't move 1 inch because he was only saying things to get elected. You know, ladies and gentlemen, this is so tough sometimes. When you listen to politicians talk, it's tough to know whether they're just doing things to get elected or not. So that's where we are right now. We, American people, desperately want someone that will not be politically correct or just tell us what we want to hear, but will tell us plainly what they're going to do and mean it from their heart so that we can either vote for them or against them. And I think that's what's going on with the American public right now. But the problem is we have a news media that is so skewed that out of the entire news media that have made donations to this presidential campaign, 95% of the media have contributed to the Democratic campaign. That means their loyalties lie in that direction, and then you wonder why they slant the news to favor the Democratic agenda. It's because that's what they are. So the media no longer is unbiased to give us the facts so we can make up our minds. Instead, they are in the opinion shaping business. That's what's going on right now. Now, what they didn't reckon for, though, was we have an alternative form of media now called the internet. So now then someone that's very thoughtful sitting in their living room can put together a blog and have as much power over the opinions of the American people as someone that's got some kind of a high-paid job from one of the major media sources. So all of a sudden the media is losing its ability, and it's one of the best things that ever happened to America. We just simply cannot afford to be told what to think anymore, because the people who are telling us what to think are being told what they must say by their higher-ups. It is a controlled media. We hate it. We yearn for the day when we thought at least that we could depend on the media to be impartial. Those days are simply over. Now we've got to really educate ourselves to know what we believe. Do we believe in one world government, or are we against it? And then we got to listen very carefully, because as soon as the poll is taken that most of the American people are against world government, the politicians that are for it are going to veil and hide what they really intend to do. They'll tell us what we want to hear, and then once they're elected, they'll go ahead and do what they want to do, because they really think the American people are pretty dumb and that they know what's best for us even when we don't know what's best for ourselves. And you see it all the time. Well, I don't mean to just go on a rant. And Jim, I know you're there in the studio anchoring the program with me. If we do have callers, we'd like to take those callers in the next segment of the program. The number to call will be on the air with Jim and myself. 1-877-END-TIME. That's 877-363-8463. In the meantime, if you're not yet a partner with End Time Magazine, become a partner. If you're not yet a subscriber to End Time Magazine, be a subscriber. If you should subscribe to one magazine in this end time, it should be End Time Magazine. The current article, Globalism, the 800-pound gorilla in the living room. Everybody needs to read that article. So give us a call. The number to call, 1-800-END-TIME, to be on the air with Jim and myself. That number is 877-END-TIME. We'll be right back. You're listening to End of the Age. Why End of the Age? Because we're living in the end of the age right now at this particular time. One more time, give us a call. 800-END-TIME, the number to call.
If ever people need to hear the unvarnished truth, it is now. There are some subjects that are not politically correct to talk about, but they're urgent. That's why I'm grateful for End Time Magazine. If you're not a subscriber, you're missing information that will really impact your life. End Time has a bi-monthly magazine that explains how current events are fulfilling Bible prophecy. You can get a 2-year subscription for only $29. You can also get a bulk subscription and pass them out to your church. We have gotten reports that End Time Magazine has caused spiritual awakenings in churches when they see the prophecies being fulfilled right now. You can start your own ministry and leave them in doctors' offices, libraries, laundromats. You never know if you might be responsible for saving someone who is searching for the unvarnished truth. That's what the magazine did in my life. Call 1-800-363-8463. That's 1-800-END-TIME and get your subscription today.
So how does it happen that they could have a conference, a United Nations conference, our administration could go there and vote for it, but never bring it back to have it ratified by the U.S. Senate, but they just start implementing it? Now, the states could ignore them, but once they do, federal funding starts to be cut off. It's like it's happened many times. If people don't adopt the policy that you can go into any bathroom you want to go into, even if you are biologically a male, but if you say you're a female, the Obama administration has mandated that you've got to be able to go into the bathroom of your choice. And the major corporations are using their economic clout to make it happen. For example, in Indiana, they passed a resolution that if a particular business or business owner had religious objections to serving certain same-sex requests, for instance, if you're a photographer and they ask you to come out and to do the pictures for their wedding, that you cannot say no, even if you object to going out and taking pictures of two men kissing when they're pronounced, I don't know what they're pronounced anymore, partners or whatever. I don't know how you would say that. I guess they sometimes call each other husband and wife. Boy, that is weird. You got two men and one's husband and one's wife. Anyway, this administration is so perverted and so twisted that they said to Indiana, you got to do this. And then major corporations such as Coca-Cola and others contacted Indiana and said, we're moving our headquarters out of your state. We're not going to bring ESPN. We're not going to bring major sports events there. And Indiana was absolutely inundated with losing $20 billion from their economy overnight because these major corporations are so controlled by people who have this global agenda, and the global agenda includes the gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender agenda. And so that's what's happening in our society. The cartel needs to be broken. The cartel needs to be brought to an end. We need to be able to break the back of this thing so that, I'll just tell you, if I were a baker and someone comes in and says, congratulations on your marriage, Dick and Harry, me to bake them a cake, sure I will. But I'm not going to vote with skills to approve same-sex marriage because God calls it an abomination. And, when the Supreme Court voted for same-sex marriage, they were voting against the Bible. There are some times you can't straddle the fence. Jesus said, either you're for me or you're against me. Now, there are just some things that are exclusive. You cannot believe the Bible, and marriage is all right because the Bible said, if a man lies with mankind as with womankind, it is an abomination. And if you're going to say, oh, I think it's a wonderful thing, you find yourself in direct contradiction to God and to his word. I read that President Obama said Michelle and I were discussing the stance that we should take on same-sex marriage. And we felt like our Christianity mandated that we endorse same-sex marriage. I looked at that. This man is supposed to be intelligent. And he can read his Bible. Both the Old Testament and the New Testament condemn homosexuality in the most certain terms. The Bible in the New Testament, Romans chapter 1, calls it vile affections. Men with men working that which is unseemly. And women even burned in their lust one toward another. The scriptures are so clear. And yet President Obama has the nerve to say my Christianity compelled me to endorse it. You talk about doublethink. It's like 1984 has arrived on our front doorstep. Okay, I'm on a rant now, and I know that, but nevertheless, sometimes we got to say what we think. We've been silent too long. Hey, preachers of America, if you're listening to me today, it's about time you come out of the closet. Because if we don't shape the opinion of the American people, believe me, the secular humanist will. Humanism says that all the answers come from men. But we don't believe that. We believe that our answers come from God. The scriptures say as many as are led by the Spirit of God, they are the sons of God. So I just want to make sure you understand how this whole thing works. Even though the American legislature laws never approved these measures, and yet now then the executive branch is ruling by fiat. It's actually dictatorship is what it is. They'll go out and make all these rules, just like we recently supposedly endorsed the new climate change agreement. We didn't endorse anything. That was President Clinton that endorsed it. He won't submit that to the Senate because he knows it's going to be voted down thunderously. So what does he say? He goes there and says, the U.S. endorses this. We did not endorse it. In order to endorse a treaty of that magnitude, they say, oh, it's not a treaty, it's just an agreement. What kind of doublethink is that? What kind of intellectual dishonesty is that? Of course, it's a climate change treaty that commits us to meeting certain standards by certain dates. But he was not going to submit that to the United States Senate because they don't believe in global warming like President Obama does. So what does he do? He just says, this is what we're going to do. And then the EPA is going to come along and tell all the states, if you don't do this, we cut your federal funding. And believe me, money talks. That's where we are right now. But we've got a chance to change all of that. As you're voting, know where the candidates stand on this hoax called global warming. You say, oh no, everybody knows it's true. No, they don't. Nobody knows it's true. Let me tell you what's not true. They say it's warmer today than it was 1,000 years ago. Totally wrong. They have dug down through ice in Greenland and found through 12 feet of ice farms that used to be farmed back around 1000 AD. It was much warmer 1,000 years ago than it is right now. And the sky didn't fall and the world was not destroyed. This is all made up because they want to promote an agenda where they control what kind of a furnace you have, what kind of a car you drive. They want to control your carbon footprint, and they want to analyze every single thing. And that's what this whole thing's about. The United Nations wants to control cities. That's the reason that this particular urban agenda, this new urban agenda, is going to track the cities, control the cities. It is absolutely horrendous. It's horrible. Okay, let me see if I can give you a little bit more information before we run out of time. So what they're saying is this. This new urban agenda document is really, in their minds, the first step for operationalizing it. First step to making sustainable development completely operational. That's huge. Wallace Henley, a journalist and former aide in the Nixon White House, who went on to become a Christian pastor and who has written extensively on globalism, said the UN is making a full-on assault against the American system of government. Well, I got to read it again. The UN is making a full-on assault against the American system of government, which requires federalism, states' rights, and separation of powers. And he, like Woods, sees Hillary Clinton in the thick of the battle, fighting on the side of the globalist, not America first. The leftist progressive philosophy is the fertilizer. Agencies sprout and grow and bring forth policy confabs like Habitat 3. The conferences then produce white papers that ultimately become the source of policies. He said, it is a leftist, progressivist dream. Sustainability is a code word for regulatory authority. Because if they're going to tell us what's sustainable, then they need to regulate what's going to make it sustainable. If they say it's not sustainable, then we got to fix that by passing a regulation. That's what really goes on here. And all of us have seen it. This meshes perfectly with the new globalism and its dream of a world without borders. Anything can be done in the name of a sustainable future, including the humanitarian invasion of a sovereign state. What's that talking about? That means we invade a state because we say that the government of that state is not treating its citizens right. Therefore, we now believe that we have the responsibility to interfere, that we have a responsibility to go in and invade, remove that leader from power, and reshape the government in our own image. It's called responsibility, RTP, responsibility to protect. Well, who decides who needs to be protected? Well, the UN does. Who's going to go do the protecting? The UN's going to. So all of a sudden you have this huge godlike system all under the world government. Now let me read it again. This meshes perfectly with the new globalism and its dream of a world without borders. Anything can be done in the name of sustainable future, including the humanitarian invasion of a sovereign state. We did it in Libya. We wanted to do it in Syria, but Russia stopped us. But only if its leaders embrace the same left progressive philosophy as the bureaucracies headquartered at the UN in New York. The true conservative seeks preservation of liberty-nurturing principles and the sustenance of values that resist the control of the bureaucrats and guarantee freedom from a globalist hegemon in the form of the UN, Henley said. Well, I think that's all I have time for today. But I want to remind you once again, there's a couple of resources that will really help you see this like it is. One is World Government Forming Now. Another one that Jim mentioned is Master Plan of the Dragon. If you want to know, how's this all happening? Where's this coming from? You need to read or to view the DVD, Master Plan of the Dragon. Both of those DVDs you can get by calling 1-800-END-TIME. That's 1-800-363-8463. And I urge all of you to subscribe to End Time Magazine. We're putting articles in there every issue that are so critical. And you can subscribe. If you don't like physical magazines, you can subscribe electronically. However you like to receive the information, I certainly would encourage you to do that. And then my last request to all of you out there today, we are in a struggle. We're not only in a struggle for the America, we're in a struggle for the world. And we are in a fight between light and darkness. End Time Ministries is on the battlefield, and we're in the front lines. We need your support. Become a monthly partner with End Time Magazine. We need your help because there's a lot of people out there against us, and we're not crying about that. However, become a partner today. Give us a call. The number to call, 1-800-END-TIME, 1-800-363-8463.
End of the Age is a production of End Time Ministries. This broadcast will be available on our website, endtime.com, in the archives section. On our website, you'll also find more information about how current events are fulfilling Bible prophecy. To reach our operators, call 1-800-END-TIME. That's 1-800-363-8463. End Time Ministries is partner supported. We would like to say thank you to our partners who made this broadcast possible. To do what Matthew 24:14 said, to reach the world with the gospel of the kingdom.